Welcome to the interview segment of Let's Talk Health, and today we will be talking to Dr. Njab. He's a medical laboratory scientist, and he's going to be telling us all about genetically modified organisms, what we need to know, how it affects our health, negatively or positively. Thank you for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you so much.
All right. Now, first of all, I want you to explain to our viewers in a layman's language or in layman's terms, what are genetically modified organisms?
Well, this is a tall task. Well, in the layman language, genetically modified organisms are nothing but laboratory controlled microorganisms that are used for the production of anything that can improve the quality of life.
That can improve the quality of life.
Yeah.
Okay, when do you narrow it down to food or plants
Yeah.
now? Where does it come in?
Yeah, when you narrow it to food, it means it can improve, number one, the nutritional value of the food. Number two, it can mean providing protection to the plant in the field so that you can have crops and the yield that is expected for a farmer to remain in business.
So I think we want to know what exact foods would you say can GMOs be used to modify, or what foods exactly? What kind of foods do GMO come in?
Well, I think it is good to lay a good foundation for the viewers to understand that genetic modification is nothing but a natural occurring process that scientists have brought into the laboratory. Okay. And I think it's good to know that for me, for instance, from my faith background, it is good to understand that the book of Genesis says that Jacob was the first genetic scientist. Why? Mm-hmm. Simply because what he did in the house of Laban is to change what Laban had into his, simply by changing the structure of what cattle were looking at. And they were genetically modified, so he could get his own portion of the bargain without fighting with Laban. Now, that is a natural selection process. Now, for us scientists, when we enter into the laboratory now, because we can't carry a whole sheep or a whole goat into the laboratory, what we do know is that what actually holds the codes of life is a molecule that is called DNA. The molecule called DNA is a mysterious molecule that only God knows everything that is in the DNA. Up to today, we've not been able to piece exactly what the whole DNA is all about. What I mean by pieces, I'm not talking about the basic structure. I'm talking about in terms of functionality. I'm talking in terms of stability. All right. So what happened in the 70s is that scientists observed that you could take a piece of a genetic material from one organism and put him in a host, and the host will begin to behave like the other organism. Okay. That's genetically what is happening. So in a layman language, you can change the color of corn, you can change the size of the corn, you can change the taste of the corn, you can change the yield just by moving genes from one place to another. That is within a controlled environment. Okay. But let me say this, once it enters, it leaves the controlled environment, it is a different business entirely. And that is a problem we have, potential problem we have with GMOs.
So in what instance does it leave a controlled environment?
Now, it leaves a controlled environment when that moves from the laboratory into a production process. Okay. Now, for instance, if I were a farmer knowing that you like yellow corn, so what I would do is that I will consistently produce yellow corn to meet your demand, your request. Okay. So in the process of producing this, I take the corn through a process that is different from a naturally occurring environment. Now, when that is changed, once the corn leaves my hand and comes to you, you don't have the control over what you have consumed. And in fact, you may not even know that I genetically modified the corn. You don't know that it is no longer done in the farm and it's done somewhere else. Now, I believe that as a scientist, I should be able to tell you that, hey, do you know what? The corn you just ate today is coming from so and so. And it will be now your right to say, I still want to be eating this type of corn, or I don't want to be taking it.
Okay. Yeah. Now, coming to concerns, are there things that the consumers should be concerned about when it comes to genetically modified foods, plants,
Absolutely.
consumables? Yeah. So what are those things?
The key component in quality management is meeting customer satisfaction. And the number one thing that a customer needs is information, basic information, how this thing I intend to buy is produced.
Okay.
What harm can it cause and pose? And now the customer will take informed decision, buy or not to buy.
Okay.
Now, let me be a little bit specific. Now, when we're trying to, for instance, genetically modify corn, we can give that particular corn the ability to resist herbicide. That was to say something that kills other plants. Okay. But in the process of doing that, I introduce a component in the corn that the consumer has no control over.
Okay.
Okay, so because the consumer has no control over and it cannot be measured, that is to say, we don't measure it routinely in the hospital, the consumer will not know when harm has started.
Okay.
So that is why the concern over genetically modified food, that's where the concern comes from. So people should be informed what happened, what can cause this. Let me give you an instance, for instance. Let me give this. When it was discovered that you could, for instance, make sure that corn can keep for long, what quickly happened that people began to consume. Nobody knew. In fact, nobody knew. Okay, but epidemiological studies, let's just say studies, have shown that genetically modified corn with a particular substance, I can mention that substance, it is Macaulay the market Roundup. That substance particularly has caused DNA damage. That is to say, it has caused harm to tissue. It has caused infertility. It can potentiate cancer. Mm-hmm. So these are the concerns that we have. So in the process of creating good, we have a long-term challenge that we can't control. The healthcare sector cannot control chronic cancer, cannot control cancer. Our facilities are not strong enough to be able to manage cancer. We are fighting with malaria. By the time cancer comes and it is at an epidemic level, just a pandemic level, we will not be able to control this. So that's what we're saying. People should be informed.
Okay. Now, we talked about identification of these foods earlier. How do we get to identify these foods? Because for all I care, I could be eating something that I don't know about and it could cause harm to my body.
I think that's, you just brought in an important component in the regulation process. Now, the technology is beautiful. There's nothing wrong with the technology.
Okay.
Now, the next thing that should be done is surveillance and safety. And I will explain what I mean. Number one, we should have laboratories in this country that can detect a product that is genetically modified. Okay. That's the number one thing. We should have capacity to do that. And tell you the fact, we have the capacity to do it. All we need is infrastructure.
Okay, so as it is now, Nigeria doesn't have the right infrastructure.
We don't have the right infrastructure. So you need the right infrastructure led by skilled med-lab scientists who have the leadership, who have the expertise, who have the competence, and they are trained to be able to do that. That is the job of the lab scientists. Detect and tell government that this has GMO. This is the level, this is toxic, this is not toxic, this is the level we can tolerate, this is the level we cannot tolerate.
So how about regulating the influx of these GMO foods into the country?
Well, that is beyond the lab scientists. Now, I think it is a job of NAFDAC to regulate. Okay? NAFDAC should regulate. But the technical expertise in terms of the technical documents that needs to approve import or export should be approved by the technically competent person. That is to say, the job of the med-lab scientist should be to say that, hey, NAFDAC, this we can import because this level is acceptable, this level is not acceptable. So I have signed, I have stamped, that is the job of lab scientists. You now hand it over to NAFDAC, and NAFDAC will do the enforcement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's come to the main issue here.
Yes.
Very quickly, just let us know. Because you said it's a beautiful technology.
Yeah.
Yes. So how safe is it? And can you just outline the health risks that may be involved in consuming GMO products?
Okay. The technology is fantastic. just like I mentioned. Now, the health risks, number one, is the spread of non-communicable diseases. Okay, the increased risk of non-communicable diseases.
So if there's this health risk, why encourage the technology in the first place?
No, the technology does not only apply to food. The technology has been using in medicine.
Okay.
We produce a substance that is very important in the regulation of the patient for
It
diabetes,
doesn't
like
apply
insulin.
to food only, but let's limit, let's take it away from food.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. For instance, we apply it in medicine to produce drugs for the treatment of so many ailments, including diabetes.
Yeah.
I get the point. In fact, some antibiotics are even produced using GMOs.
Okay.
You understand? But these are substances that are used for intervention, for treatment in a time T. For instance, a doctor will tell you that you're going to take this for 3 days, 2 times. Now, that's to achieve a purpose. You don't take it as a routine. Now, the concern with food is that food is our livelihood. It's a means of survival. You can imagine a man who should get up in the morning with pounded yam, and he has to take genetically modified pounded yam in the morning, in the afternoon, in the night. So he is consuming genetically modified pounded yam all through his life. He does not know that he's signing a prostate cancer challenge. But the challenge here will be that nobody will be able to trace it to the genetically modified food. All we'll be seeing in the laboratory is that this person presented with a cancer.
No one will be able to trace it to the GMOs.
To the GMO.
So how can we really...
No, that's what I'm saying. What I'm now saying, that's what I mentioned to you, that the job of the medlab scientist is to create that infrastructure. The job of the medlab scientist will be to detect, to tell you that this has GMO. And this GMO, the herbicide or the insecticide or the food fortification component is so. And this is the amount.
Okay.
Now, when we know the amount, we can now say that it should not be consumed for more than so.
Okay.
So that is the information that the public needs to have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, is the safety of GM foods, is it assessed differently from conventional foods?
Of course. It's assessed differently from conventional food. Why? Simply because the technology and the platform is not the same. The technology and platform from GMO is more expensive than assessing, for instance, malt or assessing what do I call it? Even yam that is not genetically modified.
Okay.
So that is it.
Now, how much awareness is there for the public about this food? Talking about Nigeria now, how much do people know about? Do you know there's anything like genetically modified food or plants? How much do people know in Nigeria?
I think
because if they don't even know anything about it, I don't see how they can even make a choice. Okay, I want it or I don't want it.
I think the initiative you have launched now by putting this platform is to get people aware.
Yeah.
I think I give you credit for that. The other one is the opportunity that the Association of Medical Laboratory Scientists, FCT branch, launched with the first scientific conference. Okay. Now the other one is the mere fact that people now know there is something called GMO. And that it is in food. And before you buy food, ask whether this thing has GMO. Now the problem again is here, government has not come to say you should label that this thing is GMO.
Okay.
So that is the first thing we want to know. That's like people, when you want to buy Panadol, you know this is Panadol, don't you? So we should be able to, everyone who is selling a GMO product should be able to label it GMO.
So
that's the first step.
That's where manufacturers come in.
Manufacturers come in, and then the regulatory agency come in.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So finally, Dr. Njab, what's your last word for our viewers today? Will you tell them this is good? Will you tell them stay off GMO products? What's your last word?
My last word is this. Life is all about responsibility. And responsibility is a function of the information that is available to you. My job as a lab scientist and a public health expert is to tell you that GMO contain substances that can be harmful to health. Before you buy a product, ask whether it has GMO or not, and take the choice to buy or not to buy.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Chen, for coming on the program today. Thank you for educating our viewers.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, the program is still Let's Talk Health, and it continues just right after now. To stay.